Okie dokie. We have a daughter.
Comes in, he's like, I will give you something stronger.
Yeah, I was like, do it. There was something with the baby's heart rate, right? Let go of Scott's hands. Here's a comb. Why don't you hold this? Everything you see in movies is like women in their pushing stage, screaming at the top of their lungs. On August 25th, 2024, I gave birth to Olivia, and I figured it would be nice to talk through our birth experience because leading up to the birth, I watched a lot of those kinds of videos and it really helped me to understand what to expect and to kind of come up with my own birth wish list. And we're doing it in English because Scott is joining today.
Hello.
He was obviously an essential part in this whole thing, and my partner during birth. I hope that I will also gain a little bit of insight as to how it went down and how it was for you, because obviously when you're giving birth, you're very much in your own space and lose all track of time.
We're also 3 months to the day, so
Oh yeah.
we're both gonna have an interesting time trying to recollect everything.
When it's so fresh in your memory, it's probably something very different than now. Like now I'm kind of like, let's do this again. And during birth, I was like, this is our own child.
The hard moments get fuzzy and the good moments get better, I think.
Yeah, that's very true.
As you look back.
When you look back, you're like, it was such a brief part of this whole experience. Like having a child is so amazing that like the couple hours that you give birth are not that bad. But when you are in those couple hours, they feel like eternity. So yeah.
Okay, we'll get into the story now.
We'll get into the story. Let's go back to the 24th, the day before I gave birth. I was already 4 days overdue. My due date was August 20th. So I was very eager to give birth. We actually went to see some friends and they gave me some dates. They were like, they're gonna induce labor. I kind of like tried a couple things, like walking on the sidewalk, like the weird curb walking. We went to bed and for some reason we didn't have dinner, which is an essential part to my story because it ruined
We didn't?
a lot of my experience. Maybe you had some cereal, but I didn't. Because I remember when I did give birth later on, I had an empty stomach, I was nauseous, but I couldn't eat. Anyway, we didn't have dinner. You went to bed at a reasonable time, I think like 11:30, and I was just in bed working. I remember I found a screenshot on my phone of like some ads that I liked that I needed as inspiration for the slow label. Like I was definitely up until like 1 o'clock. And just after I turned the lights off and I was about to go to bed, my water broke. I never imagined having a birth where my water breaks. Only 30% of births start with the water breaking. I had Braxton Hicks a lot during the 3rd trimester, so I was kind of like trying to think like, are those real? Are those Braxton Hicks? But I never had any real contractions until the water broke.
But once you had real contractions, you knew pretty immediately that they were no longer Braxton Hicks contractions.
I mean, also because the water
everyone
broke,
said like, oh, when you feel a real contraction, you'll know.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the case.
Yeah, the Braxton Hicks was definitely just like the tightening of the belly was very much like a real contraction, but the pain was kind of not there. And when I did have a real contraction, it felt like the Braxton Hicks plus period pains. And I don't know if because my water broke, my contractions were more painful. I know from other people that once the water breaks and the baby has a bit more pressure, that the pain gets worse. So I don't know if your water breaks first, does that mean all of your contractions from the beginning are more intense than they would have been? Probably, because you have that added pressure, but it's hard to compare. Anyway, my water broke and it was the weirdest sound. It made like a pop, pop. It like was a weird like popping, like really like a balloon popping in a way. And at first I thought I just had like some weird gas in my belly or something. Like it sounded like some really intense like gassy movements in your belly, but because it was then wet in my underwear, I knew that it was not that. And I immediately ran to the bathroom. They also like in birth preparation class, they were trying to explain to us like how to tell if it's your amniotic fluid or not. You will know. They say like, oh, it won't smell like pee. It has a very distinct smell, and it does. Every time I thought my water broke, it was definitely not that. Like you will smell it. I feel like it smells like marzipan, and I hate marzipan. So I was like, what is this? And it was clear, which is good, because that's also something you have to pay attention to. Anyway, I was on the toilet screaming for Scott. I was like, Scotty, my water broke. And I feel like you didn't wake up.
Yeah, how long were you screaming for? I was in a pretty deep sleep at that point.
I know, yeah. I was not screaming for that long. I just tried.
Because I remember waking up and thinking it was already the next day.
Yeah, so I just like
maybe an hour.
Ran to the bedroom and then screamed again, like from the door, and then he heard me. And I was like, get up, we have to go to the hospital, my water broke. Just to give a bit of context, I tested positive for Streptococcus B or something is what it's called, which basically means that you should go into the hospital as soon as possible after your water breaks and pretty soon after your contractions start, because you need antibiotics, which is very unfortunate. And it's definitely not how I thought my birth was going to go, but in the grand scheme of things, it was not that big of a deal.
Supposed to come into this hospital. And so I'm wondering if he's coming now or if we should wait and come in a few hours or something.
So I went back to the toilet, and I was so like, my heart was racing. I had like so much adrenaline, but at the same time, I think I was very calm. I was just like, okay, Scott, can you please pack the rest of the diaper bag? I couldn't really move from the toilet because I was like, you know, there was obviously...
Luckily, I had packed my part of the diaper bag that day.
Yeah. Last minute. It is starting. It's 1 a.m. on August 25th. And my water just broke. I'm wearing a very sexy outfit. Just whatever keeps me comfortable. Anyway, I called Marco. No, actually, I texted Marco. I was like, are you still awake? It's like 1 a.m. Can you come over and like look after Ellie? And luckily he had just gotten home from, I think, a party or something. And he came over immediately, which was amazing. It's so great that he lives so close and that he's like such a good friend.
Yeah, shout out Marco.
Shout out to Marco. That was really nice. Because I was like, oh my God, what do we do now? I really thought that I was going to labor at home, at least for a little bit. But obviously when your water breaks, in my situation, we had to go in. So yeah, I think it took like 45 minutes for us to like have Marco ready, like have Marco here, have our stuff ready and leave. And then we called an Uber, and it was such a nice guy. We were like, I was like, oh my God, how, like, what if he turns us away? What if he says like, your water broke? I don't want you like destroying my car. So I brought like all these pads to sit on, and he saw that I was pregnant, and he immediately was like, are we having a baby? Did he say something like that? I think he said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we asked him if this was his first time. He was like, no, this is my fourth time.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, then next part, we got to the hospital. They took me into a room to do a CTG to check the baby's heart rate and my contractions. So Scott had to wait outside. If I had known this, I would have brought headphones with my phone and some music and stuff like that. Because I was basically brought into this sterile, empty, dark room with, I have to say, a mosquito in the room that was annoying the hell out of me. I was having some contractions. I was on this machine. They were measuring the contractions and everything. And I was in there for about an hour, I think, or maybe even a bit more. Scott was waiting outside. He wasn't allowed in. So it was weird because you get into your head a lot. You're thinking, oh my God, what's ahead of us? Like, what is it gonna turn into? And the pain was getting a bit more intense, and it was very lonely. But we did text, and that kind of made me a lot more at peace.
Yeah, but it would have been nicer if they just let me in the room.
Yeah.
I mean, like a hospital at 1 a.m., any hospital is going to be like kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Half the lights were off.
Yeah, it was
like,
kind of eerie.
It was a weird time to go to that hospital. I mean, we had been there once before, which was good. So
yeah, we saw it already once.
The layout and what to expect.
I recommend doing that.
But even in that walkthrough, they didn't tell us, oh, you're going to be separated as soon as you go into like the different little holding areas, at least in the initial stages. So that was kind of...
I think in English they call that triage. And I've heard before that this is something that people forget to mention when they talk about birth. Like, you're going into triage, you're being checked first, and then you're going maybe into the labor room or something else. But I'm surprised that I was very calm throughout the whole thing. I was laying on this table, like, just kind of excited to experience everything.
Mir geht's gut. Bin gerade am CTG.
There was not that much fear or anxiety, which I'm very glad about. And I think it almost came naturally. It was like this instinctive thing that, like, maybe during birth, I don't know what kind of hormones go through your body, but I'm sure quite the cocktail. And I was just in this like very positive headspace. But I do have to say, like, I did a little bit of hypnobirthing in preparation. And if I had headphones and my phone, I would have probably tried to go into like some sort of hypnosis, like meditation. But because I didn't have that, I was just texting Scott and trying to like stay positive in that kind of way.
And avoid the mosquito.
Next up, we went to the doctor, and they had to draw my blood and do an ultrasound. right? And then they gave me the first dose of antibiotics. Scott was allowed in the room for that, which was good. But after that, they basically said, yeah, so now because your contractions are not super regular, you're gonna have to go into a separate room, and Scott has to go wait in the waiting room. And that was maybe 3 a.m.
Yeah, 3 a.m.
Around 3 a.m. So it was kind of annoying to be separated. And they said to me, they were like, you could be here for 24 hours. We don't know.
Yeah, and visitors weren't allowed back into that main section
yeah.
until like 9 a.m. the next morning. So
Yeah.
my only option was sitting on like a uncomfortable stool for 6 hours or going
In the
home.
middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were like, they were heavily, like they were very adamant and recommending, Scott, you should go home. You should sleep. You should prepare. We don't know when this labor is going to start. It could be 24 hours from now. So why sit in this waiting room and you can't go in for 6 hours when you could just go home? And the reason why he couldn't come in and why he was considered a visitor is because this room was a shared room with another woman who was also going through a similar experience. I think she was being induced or something. And it's basically this waiting room where you wait for your real contractions to start. So you
Not a delivery room.
Yeah, not a delivery room. Basically the room before the delivery room. And yeah, we decided for Scott to go home, which I was nervous about. But somehow, like I said, there was this weird positivity in me that I just like was fine with most of these things. Being separated at birth was something I never thought was gonna happen. Like I thought I was gonna have Scott with me the entire time. I really never imagined that to happen. But even that was okay. How was it for you?
I know, it's one of those things that sounds like, why would you ever do that? Like abandon your wife at the hospital?
Yeah.
Like when you say it out loud, it sounds terrible. But even our midwife said, it's always better if one partner, like leading up to and at birth, can try to get some sleep.
Yeah.
It means that the other person, like when it's really hard, can step in. And so like, you don't want to have the baby and then have both people behind on sleep. You want at least one person like semi caught up, because that means that person can then stay up with the baby and like assist. And then you could rest a little bit more than like you could if I was like passed out as well.
Yeah.
And so...
And there's no point in us both suffering.
Yeah, going home and like getting that like 5 hours if it wasn't really like full sleep, but better than sitting on a chair, was the right decision, I think, because then the next day was a lot more smooth, I think, for both of us.
But on the way home, Scott struggled to get a taxi because it was the middle of the night. It was like 4 a.m. And he saw a fox running around the middle of Berlin, which was kind of a weird symbolic animal to see.
The fox is one of the like horoscope animals for Virgos. Not that I'm really into horoscopes, but it was cool to see a little fox just like chilling with me while I was waiting for a cab. And it felt, I don't know, very surreal, but like kind of put my mind at ease that like there was some weird sign that like things were going to be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, now we buy Olivia all these little fox animals.
One thing to mention as well is we had a Beleghebamme, which is a midwife that is assigned just to you for your entire birth. So even if there's like a shift change, she's not going to leave you. She's kind of with you the entire time, and even before and after birth. And so my midwife came into the hospital as well, and they kind of she talked to me, and she told me she's going to go home as well. She's going to sleep because I didn't have any regular contractions. So I'm going to be able to be in this room, hopefully sleep, and then we're going to see each other the next morning. And as soon as she left the room, it was like 4 a.m. I was lying in bed. I found the text message to her. I was like, "Are you still here?" She was like, "Yeah, I'm still here. Why?" And I was like, I need some help, because the contractions were actually getting quite intense at that point. I kind of played it cool because I was like, I don't know how bad it's gonna get, so like maybe this is just nothing and I should just deal with it. And that's how I usually am with like period pains, or I was for a long time. I never took any painkillers.
But this was in the morning the next day.
This was still when you had just left.
Oh yeah.
She talked to me and then she was about to leave.
Yeah.
And then I was like, could you like hook me up to the TENS machine? If you don't know the TENS machine, it works with like electrodes. Is that the word?
Yeah.
That I'm thinking of? It like gives you electric impulses. You attach it to your back or your front.
Basically makes the muscle contract.
It makes the muscle contract, and you can like, there's like a boost setting during a contraction where it kind of like tries to take the pain away. So it's like a mechanical pain relief. And I wanted it attached to me, so in case it was gonna get worse and she wasn't here, I could at least like help myself with it. And at that point, I actually had also gotten pretty nauseous. So it was a mixture of like not having eaten, the anxiety. I have very low blood pressure, and that causes some nausea for me. And then I think also just a little bit of the pain made me nauseous. When I have period pains, I get pretty nauseous as well. I never have to like throw up or anything, and I didn't during birth either, right? Yeah. But I was nauseous the entire time, and I asked her for some help, and so she gave me a Buscopan and anti-nausea mixture into my veins. So she said that would probably help me sleep as well, because it made me a bit like drowsy. Because obviously I didn't know when labor was going to start, and missing an entire night of sleep is not a good start to labor. And then she also hooked up the TENS machine, so that was really good. And then she left, and I think I was then able to sleep a little bit, but I woke up every now and then because of contractions. Between the woman and me in that room was just a curtain. So every time I did feel any discomfort or contractions, I couldn't make really a sound because she was sleeping. And that was also a very interesting experience, because I was laboring for quite a while, or I was contracting for quite a while with this woman in the room.
But was she not laboring?
No, I think it was really just she was getting induced and nothing was yet happening. That's kind of what I think was happening with her. But because of that, I obviously didn't want to ruin her night by screaming next to her. So I kind of like tried to keep it in.
Guten Morgen. Ich habe gerade alle 7 Minuten Wehen in etwa. Und mir geht es eigentlich ganz okay, aber sie sind schon sehr schmerzhaft. Ich habe meine TENS-Maschine hier angehängt und habe in der Nacht auch noch Buscopan bekommen und so ein Mittel gegen Übelkeit, weil mir ist sehr übel. Wir haben leider gestern das Abendessen ausgelassen. Das war nicht so gut. Dementsprechend hungrig bin ich jetzt. Ich darf essen, aber irgendwie habe ich nicht so viel Lust. Aber hier drüben steht ein Frühstück.
Like I said, I tried to sleep, but the contractions were coming every maybe 7 or so minutes. And I was just getting on my hands and knees and like trying to breathe through it, like grab something. And then the doctors came in every now and then and they asked me how I was doing, and I always said like, oh, I think I'm still fine, like it's going, but it's okay. And it was getting more and more regular, which was great. I was so happy that my contractions started naturally and I didn't have to get induced. And at that point they came like every 7 minutes, every 6 minutes, every 5 minutes. And then I think at 9 or 8 a.m. they came into the room for something, and they heard me during a contraction and they were like, how regular are they? And I'm like, yeah, every 4 minutes or so, or 3 to 4 minutes. And then they were like, okay, maybe we should call your midwife. And then they called, I don't know if they called you or I think I texted you.
You texted me, yeah.
Yeah, I texted you. They called the midwife.
But then they checked how dilated you were at that point.
Yeah, I think they checked. That's one thing that I don't remember.
Yeah, they checked, I think, because she wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
And then you were 5 centimeters.
Yeah.
And then they were like, okay, you can go to a delivery room now and call your husband and get the midwife here.
5 centimeter, 5 centimeters.
Yeah, that made me kind of like super excited. Obviously they were.
But that means things progressed pretty quickly through the night.
Yeah. And at that point, actually, up until that point, because I had to be quiet, I was very in a positive headspace. I was really trying to soften during contractions, which is something you learn at hypnobirthing. I was trying to imagine like an opening, and like I was really trying to let myself be and let myself go. And I think that was really helping the dilation, because I feel like I was not resisting the pain, but it was also manageable at that point. Like it was obviously very painful, but I think that was still manageable. And I was super, super happy when they told me I was 5 centimeters already. But as soon as we moved to the delivery room, I think I moved to the delivery room when you came, you picked me up. I think at that point, that was kind of like a change. Maybe it was because suddenly I wasn't by myself anymore. Or it was because suddenly it was more a hospital setting.
So you saw me and you immediately tightened up.
Well, do you know this feeling when you are...
Pulled the baby back in?
You know when kids are kind of like in pain. Or let's say Olivia, when Olivia is hungry, she's kind of like whining. As soon as she sees me, she screams.
Yeah.
And I think that was similar, where I was like with no one that I knew and kind of by myself for most of it. And I was just like finding the inner strength. And as soon as I had you next to me, I was like, I'm in so much pain, help me. And I think that just maybe kind of shifted my mental, like my my ability to deal with the pain in a way.
I think that also happened. You got more tired, it got
Yeah.
more painful.
I had not really slept
And you were
much.
no longer as like in your head, keeping yourself calm. You were looking for like external
Yeah.
sources to help you, and nothing can really help.
And obviously, when we moved into the other room, the delivery room, it was suddenly a different setting. It was a hospital setting in a way. It was also the middle of the day. It was kind of bright, and I always imagined giving birth like in the dark. And when I labored for the first couple hours, it was obviously in the nighttime, in the morning, and it was pretty dark and pretty kind of calm. And I feel like the setting that we went into was then totally different. We tried to like put down the blinds and everything, but it was definitely
not
not as
enough.
was not as good. So I have a little birth, what's it called, report from the midwife, which is very interesting to read, by the way. You should definitely ask for it after birth. And I did, she did check me about 2 hours later, and she didn't say anything. Like, I think I asked for her to check me, and she was like, okay, I'll check you. And then she did, and she just said, yeah, you're making great progress. It's looking great. You're going in the right direction. And I was like, how dilated am I? Like, what's the number?
She was saying all the right things and seeing all the wrong things. I mean, not the wrong things.
Well,
but just
she was
like,
trying to
there was,
not tell
There was
me.
no progress, basically.
Yeah. She then said like, yeah, it hasn't really changed much. And now reading the report, she wrote 4 centimeters. I don't know if it can go backwards.
I don't know.
But that was really hard because those 2 hours felt like forever. We came into that room, we got a yoga mat and a birthing ball, and I was just on the floor and having contractions every, like 2 minutes or so. I don't think we
3
tracked
minutes
much at this
maybe?
point.
No, we weren't really tracking it. But they did seem to be, like, you were clearly getting in more and more pain,
Yeah.
and the contractions seemed to be lasting longer. And so then when they said like, oh, there was like 0 progress made, I don't know, it was like a pretty devastating, you're like, it feels like if you're like running a marathon and you run 2 hours
and
then they're like, oh, actually you
spot.
haven't moved anywhere. You've just been on this treadmill for the last 2 hours, but you can start the marathon now. That's what it felt like. Obviously I wasn't doing it, but.
Yeah. Was I normal between contractions? Because when I think back to birth, I don't think I really relaxed between contractions. I know that when a contraction was coming, I was like, no, I don't want this. I like, not again, like it felt like the pause was not long enough. But in that pause, in that break, was I talking normally?
No.
What was I doing?
You weren't talking normally, but you weren't really saying anything. You were just kind of like laying on that ball.
In my own space.
Yeah, like kind of low moaning.
Not touching.
Occasionally you would say like, oh, I don't want this again. No, not again. And then it would start again, of course. But we weren't like having a conversation.
Yeah, that was something that I
And when
didn't expect.
if the midwife was asking you a question, you weren't really responding to the question. You know?
Really, yeah. That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
And I really thought that because there is obviously, women say you can take a break between contractions. And that's true in a way, but my energy was so drained from the contraction and I was so scared of the next one that I really didn't find the time to have normal conversations. And when I watch other birth videos, I always saw these women that were like telling a joke, like, I don't know, drinking some water and like looking up and like deciding what's happening next. That was not the case for me. I think I was just constantly like eyes closed.
I mean, there were moments where you were more lucid and like probably could have, like we did talk. You probably could have made more decisions if needed. But yeah, I mean, I get why they say like it's good to have a partner there, husband, spouse, whatever, because when you're really like in the moment of the contraction and the doctors need to make a decision about like what to do next, and like that decision is on you to say yes or no to.
I could have not made it.
Yeah, you probably like you like just can't.
I barely was. Yeah, I remember there were some decisions, some questions thrown at me, and they do say don't try to not ask the woman questions when she's going through labor, because obviously some things have to be decided. And I remember at that point when I said it's unbearable, I think I want some pain relief. The hospital didn't have any laughing gas, unfortunately, or gas and air is what it's called. That's something I wanted to try. But so the only option was a PDA. PDA in German. In English, it's epidural. And my midwife, which was on my birth wish list, said to me, hey, how about we try something different? She was like, do you want to try a water birth? A pool just opened up. And I really thought I was going to say yes, like before birth. But during birth, I just did not want to move. I didn't want to move away from where I was. It just felt horrible to just a simple walk into a different room. But when she asked me, I could not make the decision. I just was like, yes, no, yes, no, yes. Like I'm already very indecisive, but during birth, it was really hard to go into this logical mind and try to think about the pros and cons of a certain decision. So that's why I really, really, really recommend writing a birth wish list or plan and having a partner there. It doesn't have to be your partner, can be your mom, your friend, just someone who knows your wishes. And even a beleghebamme, like a midwife that's just for you, she knows what you want and what you in your right mind have decided. So when you're going through labor, they can kind of rely on those things that you told them. At about 12 o'clock, which was 11 hours after my water broke and my contractions started, I asked for an epidural. And after a couple of, like I said, some decisions that we needed to make, we actually decided for the epidural. We asked for it at 11:53 and they actually came at 12:41. So it takes about an hour for the anesthesiologist to come, to set up everything, to tell you everything. No, actually, I think the anesthesiologist needs to talk you through everything one more time. And I was just like, just get to it, like I was just like, don't wait. I don't know how they did it. I think they numbed the area first with some injections, right? And then they put the epidural. Or was it always the epidural?
I didn't watch it, but that's probably what they did.
It was pretty bad because Scott can't look at needles. And I was like hunched over, having contraction after contraction. And they were very patient, which is great. Like you don't have to like sit there the entire time, which it took like maybe 20 minutes to put it in or 15 minutes.
I think it should be faster than that, but it
should have been faster.
Took them a few times.
But they really like when I had a contraction, they told me, okay, breathe through it. We're gonna remove everything and you can do it. Eventually they put it in after they tried finding it for a long time, and obviously it didn't feel good. I remember definitely making some sounds when they put it in. It's a big needle that goes pretty deep into your back. So it's not nothing.
They don't even call it a needle, they call it a catheter. That's how
huge it is. Yeah, so that was definitely painful. But the thought of not having the pain of the contractions was making it okay for me. Like I just had that in mind. It's gonna relieve my pain. I'm gonna feel so much better. What I didn't know was how long it was gonna take until the pain would be gone. Because obviously you make the decision for the epidural, then it takes an hour for them to actually come sometimes. It takes some time to put in. Now the question is, okay, at 1 o'clock it was in, when did I actually feel the pain relief? And that was one of the hardest parts about my birth that I quote unquote gave up. I didn't want to have the epidural. Initially that was not my plan, but the pain was so bad and I was not progressing that I figured that would be the best thing to do. But then the hardest part was it took me about 2 hours to actually feel pain relief.
But did they say that that's normal?
I don't think so.
I don't think that's
They
normal.
never really explained what was happening and why it wasn't working. That was something that I was very confused by. They put it in and I asked for a walking epidural. I think that was one of the issues. So walking epidural is a very light epidural that doesn't affect you too much so that you can still labor in different positions. You don't have to just be on your back. And it gives you a bit more of a sensation down there so that you don't lose all feelings from your belly down. But the issue was that I was feeling heavy legs and numb legs, but no pain relief in my belly. So I was feeling the contractions from my memory, and back then what I said to everyone, they were feeling no less painful. And actually in the birth report, it says that 2 hours after they successfully placed the epidural, I told them that I had no pain relief in my belly. So it took me 2 hours, or took them 2 hours to note that down and really realize that it was not working. And then they gave me more. So some random doctor came in. We had no idea who it was. I just remember from my drowsy state, like pain, I just opened my eyes once, and he just walked in with like this whole setup, and he was like, "I'm gonna give you something stronger." That's my memory.
But we had,
and I had
but what's
no
funny is there was
hesitation. I
nobody
like,
in the
"Give it to
room
me."
at that point.
Yeah.
Midwife had left.
We
All the
didn't know
nurses had
who he
left.
was.
We had shut all the blinds, so it was pretty dark.
It was creepy.
And he just came. We had never seen this guy.
And never
Of
again.
all the doctors that had kept coming in and out, this guy was brand new. Anesthesiologist comes in. He's like, "I will give you something stronger."
Yeah. I was like, do it. It's quite funny, from my birth wish list before to that moment, it was like night and day. I was just like, yes, I need something stronger. It's intense. The pain was so intense. It was really like, at that point, my belly was contracting so hard. I still had the TENS machine on, which at some point I was wondering if I should have taken it off.
Did you know? I thought we took that off at that point.
Oh, maybe for the epidural they took it off. But before the epidural, I wasn't sure if it was actually making it better or if it was just making it more annoying, because you have these electrodes in your back like vibrating or twitching your muscles while also having a contraction, which technically should relieve the pain, but it is an added, I don't know, inconvenience. I remember grabbing Scott's hands during every single contraction and digging my nails into your hands. How was that for you?
We should have given you a manicure before we went, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just kept switching
It was a
hands.
weird thing as well. I feel like I always wanted you close. Like it almost felt like it wasn't really helping me to hold you so tightly. But it was like this mental thing of like, if I don't do it, something's gonna go
It could
bad.
be worse, yeah.
Yeah. Like, so every time there was a contraction coming, I was
Or just
my
nice
eyes
to know
closed,
that
I was
someone else is
screaming
in
for you.
pain while you're also in pain.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't want to be the only one. But the midwife at some point gave me a comb. She was like, okay, let go of Scott's hands. Here's a comb. Why don't you hold this? I don't know if that was any different. Couldn't tell you.
It was better for me, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. At that point, I was pretty nauseous. I tried to throw up, but it didn't work. But yeah, that was kind of annoying. Just like this whole feeling of like, I haven't eaten in so long. I'm super hungry, but I'm also so nauseous. Like that was something that was distracting me from actually laboring well. It was like a constant issue that I had. Like, I feel so sick. I also remember at some point you gave me Gatorade, because I was like, I'm so tired, so sick. And then you were like, you were eating pretzels,
Yeah,
and
you
I told you
hardly-
stop
you
eating
ate-
pretzels. It's annoying. I was really angry at that, because the chewing sound, I was just so hungry, but I couldn't eat. But every time you gave me something to eat, it just felt awful. Like it felt like my mouth was
Too sweet, too
it was
dry.
it,
too
yeah, everything was
salty.
everything. It was too dry, too salty, too sweet, too intense for me.
The thing is, I needed those pretzels and that Gatorade.
Because you also hadn't eaten.
I wasn't eating. That was really all I was eating. And then like, if my blood sugar gets low, and I'm in a hospital with like a bunch of needles and blood and blah, I needed to just like continue eating something dry, like bready, because that was like the only thing keeping me alive.
Yeah.
alive.
After they gave me the extra dose of epidural, I think about an hour or 45 minutes later, they checked me again. I don't remember why they checked me. Was there any reason for it?
Just to see how you were
Just to
progressing.
see? Like there was no, I didn't feel any, I didn't want to push or something, right? Or
No,
I think I
you
did.
were still having contractions, but they were clearly at that point not as painful.
Not as painful. I was kind of sleeping a little bit, I think.
So they checked you. You were like 9 centimeters, and then the
Which is
midwife
really good. It
midwife
felt
was
so
like,
good.
"Okay, we can like basically have this baby now."
Yeah.
And so
It felt
you know,
weird at that point because I was so calm and kind of sleeping because I didn't feel so much.
That was probably
And
the
she was
nicest
like, "So now
part
we can
though
push."
of the epidural was like at that point it felt like we were like scheduling it when we wanted. She was like, "We could have the baby now." I was like, "All right, does everyone want to take a little break first before we like have this baby?"
Yeah, it felt so
And it was
chill.
like you took a nap, I went for a walk.
Yeah. I had a really
She
nice
got a
talk
coffee,
with the midwives,
like-
like how to push and stuff
We're like,
that.
"Okay, everyone like back here in 45 minutes and we'll have the baby." It's
It
like,
was so weird.
I don't know. But before that, it just felt like a lot of stress and pressure of like, when
Yeah.
is this going to happen? When is it going to end?
Yeah.
You know, like, and then at that point it was like, okay, everything looks really good. The baby's healthy. Anna's feeling a lot better. She
Like,
got
let everything
She got
kind
a
of
little bit
work.
of sleep. The whole atmosphere got a lot more calm.
I also think that because I was not feeling the pain anymore, I wasn't tensing up anymore. Because before, obviously, up until we got into the delivery room, like I said, I was able to breathe through it and open up during contractions. After that, the pain was so bad that I just tensed up. Every time I got it, I was like, no, not again, not again. And I really like clenched up everything. And I think that really didn't help progress and let my body open. So I think having the epidural and like kind of getting a bit more calm and like my body more still, and sleeping as well, like it really helped my body to open up. There was one moment after they checked how dilated I was where they did a sonogram, like they did a scan. Why did they do that? There was something with the baby's heart rate, right? They couldn't find it, but that could have just been like the placement of the CTG.
That was the placement
all
of the
these
things. Those wireless things kept, I don't know, bugging out.
Yeah.
And they had a hard time telling the difference between your heart rate and the baby's heart rate. And so they did one last scan just to check that like nothing was abnormal.
Und spüren Sie die Wehen oder spüren Sie nicht?
Ich spüre also ich merke, dass der Bauch härter wird, aber nicht so stark gewesen.
Alles sieht gut aus. Keine Nabelschnur am Hals, ist alles okay.
Dann würde ich sagen, war das jetzt eher die schnelle Eröffnung
Es kann
und
sein.
die Positionierung.
One thing that
They didn't seem seriously concerned. It was just like, well, we can't really tell the difference right now because the machine's not working properly.
I really appreciated them staying this calm, because I think if I had known, for some reason I wasn't fully aware that this was the issue. I was just like, oh, we're checking on the baby. But it was actually like, call the doctor and let's check if the baby's heart rate is okay. If I had known that, which, like I said, I think they were saying that, but it wasn't fully registering. I was kind of half asleep. If I had kind of registered that, I would have definitely panicked a bit more. But it was they kept it very calm, which was good.
I mean,
very
they didn't.
positive.
Yeah, they definitely didn't seem
They didn't
panicked.
super worried. Yeah, it was.
But
mainly
that's the thing is like all of that stress and pressure.
It was gone.
It looks like it's on the mother.
Oh.
But all of that stress and pressure is actually also on the baby as well. You just can't see it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's good that they did the extra check.
Yeah, and everything was good with her. It was actually something that I really am so happy about, that this whole labor experience was technically like, I mean, obviously it was painful, but it was so positive. When they checked on her, she was in the right position, everything was good, everything was progressing. So that's something I'm super grateful for, because I know that some women, I think it's called sunny side up, when the baby's like in a weird position coming down, like front facing, and that's apparently even more painful. I cannot imagine that. But yeah, I'm glad that everything was okay. Everyone took a break and we came back and we started pushing, which is, I started pushing, which is obviously, Mona's watching right now. She's like, I don't want any babies. This was one of the best experiences because of the epidural. It was actually, the pushing phase was one of the things I was most nervous about when we were doing the birth preparation class, because they call these things like the ring of fire and all of those sensations that you're gonna feel. I knew from other people telling me about their birth that you're so full of adrenaline and so happy that finally your baby's gonna be here, that it's not that bad. But everything you see in movies is like women in their pushing stage screaming at the top of their lungs.
That's all you see is the last like 2
all
minutes.
you see is that.
Yeah.
And I was nervous about that. Like I was like, oh God, I don't wanna like feel that pain. But because of the epidural, we were able to do this whole thing with like smiles and excitement and positive vibes. Scott played DJ. What did you put on?
I think we just played James Blake's.
Yeah. You played Max Richter after she was born, right?
Yeah, that
And James
after.
Blake during pushing. I think we didn't play any music during the other part of the
No,
labor.
it didn't feel
right.
It was too the whole situation was so stressful and everyone was like anxious and you were screaming, and we had a woman in the other room screaming at the top of her lungs.
That was scary.
Yeah.
I was also able to push in an unusual position. They call it Hirtenstand or something. Yeah, Hirtenstand, which is basically I was on all fours with a birthing ball in front of me with a rope that I could pull, and I ended up with one leg in the front and one leg in the back, like kind of kneeling, which is, I've never seen that kind of laboring position, but in Germany at least, they're very open to taking on different positions rather than only the one that you see in the movies, which is apparently the least effective one anyway.
Which is the only one they allow in the US, which
Crazy.
still makes no sense
Weird.
to me.
Yeah.
Having now seen different variation,
Yeah.
because you were on all fours first and progressing, but like not as quickly as they wanted in the pushing phase. And then our midwife said, hey, why don't we try putting one leg up if you can? Like that's the benefit of the walking epidural, is that like you can still kind of move your legs even if you lose some feeling.
They also turned off the epidural, by
They
the way.
had turned it off at
an
that
hour
point,
before
so
pushing.
there was no more...
It was kind of getting a little bit... I had more
Yeah.
feelings in my legs than before.
But as soon as they did that, Olivia was like on her way out.
And midwives are amazing. Like they were able to just like with their feelings, like they can feel the baby's head and they know where the baby is positioned, how far it's come down. And she just knew. She was like, can you do a little bit more of a arched back or a little bit more of this kind of position? And then they knew what it took or what it needed, what kind of positioning, what kind of repositioning we needed to get her out, which is just crazy to me. Like, I don't know if I felt necessarily the urge to push. I did feel the contractions sometimes, but I really had to look at the monitors as well. So I had a monitor in front of me where I could see the contractions coming. Because of the epidural, I felt the tightening of the belly, but I didn't feel it when it was going away again. So kind of like when I needed to stop pushing, because you're obviously only pushing during the contraction and then you stop pushing. We tried different techniques of breathing as well. One where I was kind of like just breathing her out, so I wasn't like holding my breath. And then sometimes we tried where I was really just like holding my breath and pushing. That's something I didn't think I was gonna do, because during the birthing class they kind of tell you not to do that. But I think it just whatever it takes to get the baby out, right? I don't know if I'm jumping over anything here, but I'm gonna move right to when she was born.
Yeah. How long did that process take?
They put me on all fours at 4:17.
Yeah, okay.
And an hour later she was born. So I think when I really started
Yeah,
pushing
because
was
there was a minute where we were rushing for 4:47.
Yeah. 4:47 is my favorite time.
But that was only
7:47, but yeah.
Yeah, so we were rushing for like 30 minutes. We were like, maybe it can happen. And even the midwife was like, yeah, we're making like we can do it. And then that came and went.
But the pushing was really only 1 hour in total.
Yeah.
And when they told me, they were like, okay, now start breathing differently. Breathe like rapid breaths. Like, I don't know what they call it, but it's like, she was like, okay, just like, don't push too much and just breathe like that. I knew from the birth preparation class that is the breath you do when the baby's coming.
Okay, und jetzt machst du. Genau,
And I was just starting to tear up. I was trying to breathe like that, but I was starting to cry, so I was like, I couldn't focus. I was just, suddenly there was so much adrenaline. I don't think it was because my body knew that she was coming, but it was because I knew in my head that this is the breath. Like they're not telling me, because they were like, let's not disrupt what she's doing because it's going well. But yeah, that was so exciting. And they actually wrote in the birth report that I was pushing really well considering the epidural. So we chose the right time to stop the epidural to give me a bit more sensation so that I could feel at least the pushing and a little bit of the contraction. Yep, and then at 5:14, she was born. And she screamed immediately.
Oh, du weißt ja schon. Hallo. Schau mal unter dich.
17:14
They put her right below me because I was on all fours, and obviously because I had the epidural, I didn't really know how to now get on my back on the same small bed that she was in and hold her and breastfeed her or put her skin to skin. That kind of logistical issue was a bit annoying, but I basically just said like, can Scott do skin to skin with her and then I take her, which was also totally fine for me. Like, I know that it's something that mothers want to do right away, and I would have done if I could have done it, but I didn't want to fall on her or something. I didn't know how my legs were working. So I just told them like, can Scott take her? And then I will take her once I'm in position.
That was very generous of you.
Thank you.
I got the first bond.
She's always going to be a daddy's girl now. Yeah, how was that for you?
I wasn't even thinking at that point. I just ripped my shirt off and grabbed my baby.
You didn't rip it off.
I did.
You
I unbuttoned it gently.
I don't know how you managed to do that. I would have been like...
Yeah, she's very sticky when she comes out.
Yeah.
Me, I get obviously queasy in hospitals.
Yeah,
at, like
with all the
sight
blood
of
and
blood.
stuff, yeah.
But none of that fazed me at all.
I feel like I wonder, and I'm sure there are studies, I wonder what dads or partners' bodies go through.
Yeah, what hormone?
What hormones you get and what triggers that. But I wonder, like, did you feel
wonder
different?
if, yeah, I mean, definitely like adrenaline,
Yeah.
probably oxytocin. But for me, like, I did feel like that adrenaline come down, you know, when you get like really tired, hungry.
Yeah, we got
like,
so hungry.
like an
after
hour
that.
or so later, it was like you really feel that, like, as if you like stepped over the ledge.
After that, it doesn't end. I feel like you always imagine like, and then the baby's born, happy family, woohoo. The cord was very short, so Scott needed to cut the cord before you take the baby up. So we did delayed cord clamping. You cut the cord, which I was very surprised by. We have a photo of you doing that. How was that? Was that weird?
No, it was fine.
Yeah, you cut the cord. Then the placenta came out by itself. They gave it a little bit of a tug, and then it came out. But then the midwife said that she would give me some oxytocin because it would stop the bleeding more and it would help me heal better or something. And I was open for that, so I got that. They inspected the placenta, everything was fine, and then they left the room. No, did they give me a catheter first? I think so, because I couldn't pee.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they left the room and they just let us have a moment and we played some Max Richter. I breastfed Olivia and she was sucking immediately. It was such crazy
that instinct is wild.
Yeah, the
That
breast
she just
crawl.
like immediately crawls up, finds a nipple,
She's
knows
like,
how to latch. I don't know, that's like the most instinctual thing that probably humans do their entire lives.
Yeah.
So watching that was like probably the most like real thing.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I think like right after birth. It was very cool.
Yeah. And we had a lot of time to ourselves then in the delivery room, which I was surprised by. At some point we actually called them in and we were like, could you help us like get everything organized and leave the room? They offered me to go home immediately, but I couldn't go to the toilet, and so they had me stay a night. That was also something that we didn't expect. We really wanted a family room, and we thought because it was actually a pretty big hospital, well-known hospital in Berlin, we didn't think that it was going to be an issue, but we did not get a room together. So Scott had to go home, and I had to go in a shared room with someone else with the baby. So that was also not as
not the
planned.
dream first night for sure.
No. But obviously...
And for the second time, I was like, am I making the wrong decision by going home?
Oh, you didn't have a choice. They literally
they
did not
were literally
let
like, you have to go home.
You're a visitor,
Yeah.
which is just not nice.
It's like I could have slept on the sidewalk, I guess. I don't know.
Obviously, it's not the worst thing in the world. We were healthy. We were happy. That was all that counted. And having the baby with me, I was not even feeling lonely or something. I was just so excited to have her. I just could not stop staring at her. The first night was obviously really hard because she was crying a lot and I was very tired. I see her. Yeah, she's coming right now with her Oma. I was very tired. And it was really hard to, when you're healing and you also have to breastfeed, you also have to get up and get the baby. Sitting was hurting. Everything was hurting, you know? And so that was really hard, but there was so much like positivity just because I was looking at her like, oh my God, you're my baby, you know? All the excitement made it all better. Hi, Schatzi. Crazy to think that this happened 3 months ago. I feel like she's been here for much longer than that.
You look how big she is.
She's huge. Hi. Oh, cool cheeks. So I hope we answered most of the questions. I actually have one more question that I wanted to answer, but it's pretty long and I'm gonna do it in the comments below. Someone asked what we would have brought into the hospital bag or what we would have done differently in terms of what we're packing. I can put my answer in the comments below because it's a bit of a kind of longer list of what we needed and what we didn't need, that kind of stuff. I read something that I wanted to read that I thought resonated so much with me. Someone, or I don't know where I saw this, but I wrote it down in my notes a couple days after birth. Your heart is now walking on the outside of you for the rest of your life, and that is very true. Cheesy but true. I think one last thing that I wanted to say is getting an epidural is obviously something that a lot of women, especially in Germany and Austria, are not very, are trying to avoid, let's say. I think for my next birth, I would definitely consider doing that again. I did not regret getting it. It was something that really, I think, helped the birth. I don't know how long it would have taken if I hadn't gotten it. And it made our whole experience towards the end especially very positive, like we said. So I'm very thankful for modern medicine to be able to offer this kind of pain relief. But I do think that it was very important that I labored for the majority of the time without it, because that really helped as well kind of do my part in labor and, like, you know.
And I think you're more in tune with your body at that point.
Yeah.
So then once you had the epidural, you kind of knew the differences of
I knew when it was
contractions
time to
and
get
the
it.
pushing. And
Yeah. And also a
So
fun
the trick,
fact,
I think, is go as long as you can without it.
Yeah.
Getting it is no big deal.
Yeah, and an interesting fact is 69% of women in Germany get the epidural. So if you do get it,
And like
don't beat
99%
yourself
of women
up
in
for it.
France get the epidural.
Yeah.
And like 100% of women in America get the epidural.
Quite a lot, yeah. So just like,
It's not a taboo anymore.
yeah, don't feel bad about it, because, and don't let anyone make you feel like you didn't do a hard thing, because labor is a hard thing, either if you get it or not, because it doesn't end with the birth of your baby. You then recover for quite a while. So it's quite the crazy thing you're doing, and whatever helps, and I think that's important to mention as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thank you for watching. And
This just became a PSA on epidurals.
yeah, it was great to talk through everything. Okay, baby needs a diaper change and feeding. So we're gonna leave you and say thanks for watching. Bye-bye!
The joys of parenthood.
Now it's all starting. Now it's getting real.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.